So, hi, I'm Miss Erin.
I'm Miss Allison.
And welcome to Simply Science. So, today we're going to be talking about pollinators. And pollinators are probably one of the most important types of animals out there. What a pollinator does is it takes pollen from one plant to another plant. And that's actually how we get a lot of our food.
So, think about the summertime. You're wearing a brightly colored swimsuit, and a bee or other insect might fly near you, and they're attracted to you because you might look like a flower if you're wearing bright colors.
So we've got a lot of different types of pollinators. Some of them you're going to be more familiar with than others.
Like
some
bees.
Of you might, yep, and some of you might not realize are pollinators, like ants and beetles and even bats. So let's kind of go through some of them. So one of our pollinators is a bat. Bats actually don't pollinate around here. They're going to pollinate more in the desert and in tropical areas. So in the desert in the United States, they're going to pollinate agave and sonora cactuses.
Yum. All right, another one you're probably very familiar with are bees. Now, bees are actually pretty interesting creatures because they're coated in like a hairy fur. So when they are visiting flower to flower, they get pollen trapped all in their hairy fur, and they can't just dust it off and take it all back to the beehive. So what happens is when they visit another flower, the pollen rubs off and gets into that flower, and that's how plants can be pollinated by that's one way plants can be pollinated by pollinators. That's why bees are so awesome too.
Bees will take some of that pollen, and they have on their legs what are known as pollen sacs or pollen baskets, and they'll stick some of the pollen back in there to take back to the hive to eat later. So another pollinator is beetles. Where is our beetle? There is our beetle. So beetles, they kind of like stinky flowers. So they're going to crawl around, and just by crawling through the flower and looking for pollen and nectar is how they're going to pollinate.
Another one you're probably very familiar with are butterflies. Now, butterflies and hummingbirds have very interesting mouth parts that they have adapted to help them get nectar and pollen from flowers to share. And they usually like flowers that are kind of shaped like this.
So they kind of have a tunnel or a funnel.
And you can see why, because if you look at the hummingbird's beak, it is shaped perfectly to fit right down in there to get the pollen and nectar at once, and then it shares it from flower to flower as well. And butterflies also have a really neat mouth part that they use to reach down in those holes as well.
And you forgot about moths. Moths do the same thing.
And yes, moths, friend of the butterfly, and they do. They have mouth parts very similar to the butterflies, and they also go down in there, get their pollen and their nectar.
So one big difference between butterflies and moths, though, butterflies are going to be active during the daytime, so they're going to look for brightly colored flowers. Moths, since they're active more in the evening and at night, are going to look for flowers that are lighter colored, because lighter colored flowers are going to stand out at night.
That's right.
So have we gotten all of our Oh, I forgot about the one that you probably don't know about.
Super important too.
These are actually the second most important pollinator next to bees. These are flies. Flies are responsible for what is probably one of your favorite foods, chocolate.
It's funny, you don't usually think of flies and good smelling things or good smelling flowers, but
and a lot of flies, to be honest, don't visit good smelling flowers. They're going to look for flowers that are pretty stinky. And one particular flower that they're going to look for actually smells like rotten meat. Yuck.
But one really cool thing that we wouldn't have if it weren't for flies, coffee.
I didn't know about coffee too.
Have to have flies to pollinate coffee.
So we talked a lot about your pollinators. I do want to take a minute to talk about your parts of a flower because that's pretty important with pollinators. So I'm going to have Miss Allison to hold up my model of a flower there. You've got some pretty important parts. So your petals are the pretty part of your flower. That's actually going to be what attracts your pollinator. And some petals actually have some UV properties that we can't see with our eyes, but they can see, and it'll actually kind of light up certain areas of the flower, especially right around where there's going to be pollen or nectar, because the flower wants a pollinator to come and visit that. If it doesn't visit it, the flower can't make seeds.
Can't make seeds. We can't have new plants, which means we can't have fruits and vegetables and the food we eat. So that's another reason why pollinators are super important.
Now, down around the bottom of a flower, you're going to see what look like some green leaves. Those are known as sepals, and those actually protect the flower before it blooms and opens up. So the stamen is the boy part of a flower, and that is actually where your pollen is going to be. So when a pollinator comes to the flower, they're going to pick up pollen from the stamen, and it will get transferred to the pistil, or the girl part of a flower. And once it gets to the pistil, it will eventually make a seed and a fruit.
Now, some flowers can make their pollen and seeds very quickly. Some plants and flowers, it can take a long time for a plant to make its flower and its pollen and its seeds. It just depends on the plant. But that doesn't make our pollinators any less important.
So definitely when you're outside, be sure to keep out an eye for pollinators. Let us know what pollinators you see. Thanks for tuning in with the Lincoln County Public Library. We'll see you again soon.
Bye.